My spouse left me for the son of a prominent politician, completely unaware that my family operates a $5 billion enterprise. When I stepped into my parents' company, both of them were present, and my ex-wife mockingly asked if I had come to plead for a job, calling me a poor man. Her new husband chimed in, saying that poor individuals weren't welcome. My parents, furious, shouted back, "We fired your mother. Both of you, leave." I had moved on and found happiness in my life, having married into a wealthy family. As I sat in the hotel lobby with my wife, Madison, she couldn't resist making fun of my seemingly modest lifestyle. Her sharp voice pierced through my calm as she taunted me with her latest news. She bragged about her new husband, who happened to be the son of the president of Goldsmith Enterprises. The name rang a bell, but I couldn't quite place it at first. As Madison continued to boast, I found humor in her arrogance, even though she was completely oblivious to it. "My name is Patrick, and I'm 37 years old. I live a comfortable life with my wife, Madison. I work in my family's real estate business, primarily handling administrative tasks while my mother, the president, oversees the major strategies. As an only child, I am expected to one day take the reins of the company. Despite the weight of this responsibility, I strive to maintain a balance between my personal and professional life, especially when it comes to Madison. She completed high school and works for a moving company, a demanding job that I respect. To avoid making her feel inadequate, I rarely discuss my university degree or my future aspirations as the president of the company. Madison and I met through a mutual friend during college. After my friend moved, which was handled by Madison's company, she introduced us. Initially, Madison was interested in him, but after he turned her down, we began to get to know each other. Her easygoing nature complemented my meticulousness, and our relationship blossomed. We married in our late 20s after a brief courtship. Our marriage has been smooth, bolstered by the warm acceptance of Madison's parents, a refreshing contrast to the typical in-law challenges that some of my friends face. Despite Madison's demanding job, which often kept her out late and physically exhausted, she remained committed to our marriage. Even on her toughest days, she expressed gratitude as I waited up to share dinner with her. I felt fortunate to have such a devoted partner. However, after a year of marriage, our once peaceful life began to show signs of strain. One night, as we settled into bed, Madison unexpectedly broached the subject of having children. Her tone was laced with irritation, catching me off guard. I had thought about starting a family too, and although we weren't actively trying, I believed it would happen naturally with time. I reassured her that it had only been a year and that there was no rush. I wanted children, but I knew that stressing about it wouldn't help. To calm the situation, I adopted a relaxed demeanor, but Madison, more assertive than usual, quoted statistics. "You know, there's about a 90% chance of conceiving within a year for couples not using contraception." Not being well versed in such specifics, that figure sounded surprisingly high to me. "If you're concerned, maybe we should both get tested," I suggested, thinking it wise to address any potential issues together. However, Madison's reaction was unexpectedly harsh. "What are you implying?" "That it's my fault," she retorted, her tone filled with contempt. It was the first time she had spoken to me this way. I hadn't accused her of anything, I merely suggested a joint approach to find clarity. Yet, Madison concluded that I was blaming her and added, "It's definitely the man's fault," as if to underline that I was the problem. I wanted to respond, but I was too shaken, barely managing to reply, "Of course, so just you get tested. I'm too busy with work. I have a job too, you know." "You're just coasting along in your mom's company," she snapped. Her words stung. I never just coasted, although my role involved many administrative tasks. I was actively learning management skills from my mother in preparation to lead the company someday. That night, any attempt at discussion was met with curt replies, and we fell asleep with our backs turned in silence, a heavy air hanging between us. From that point on, Madison's attitude toward me shifted drastically. Returning home late one evening after a discussion about the future with my mother, I found Madison waiting for me over dinner. "I'm sorry, I just got home 15 minutes ago. I'll start cooking now, just wait a little, please," I hurriedly explained, but Madison dismissed it. "That's typical of a small company's boss's son. She didn't realize the scale of my mother's business, a significant real estate company with hundreds. As I turned 37, our attempts to conceive a child continued to be unsuccessful, and it seemed that Madison had resigned herself to the idea of not becoming a mother. Her late nights became more frequent, and sometimes she wouldn't come home at all. When she did return, she would say she had been out drinking and singing karaoke until dawn. Her behavior reminded me more of a carefree college student than a committed wife, which was incredibly frustrating. My work had become increasingly demanding, and the dream of starting a family had to be sidelined. However, Madison's recent actions were becoming intolerable. Her disregard for our life together was painfully obvious. One day, after Madison left the house on her day off, I noticed she had forgotten her smartphone in the living room. I picked it up, intending to place it in her room, but just then, it rang. The caller ID displayed a name, Daniel. Assuming he was a colleague, I answered to let him know Madison had left her phone at home. "Hey, Madison, you're late. I've been waiting for 50 minutes. Hurry up, or we'll miss the park opening." "We haven't had a date in so long," a flirtatious voice said from the other end. The mention of a date stunned me, and I quickly hung up, my heart racing. This man wasn't just a colleague, he was someone Madison was seeing romantically. Holding her phone, proof of her infidelity clenched in my hand, I felt a mix of shock and anger. While I struggled with potential infertility, Madison had been carelessly engaging in an affair. Her recent distance suddenly made sense, and I stood there trembling with indescribable anger at the betrayal. Realizing that Madison no longer needed me in her life was a devastating blow, but discovering her betrayal made the situation even more unbearable. Determined to confront the issue head-on, I began gathering evidence of her infidelity. Unlocking her smartphone using her birth date was effortless. The call history and messages were dominated by exchanges with someone named Daniel, filled with affectionate and intimate words that turned my stomach. I meticulously documented everything, taking photos with my phone before returning her device to its usual spot, acting as if nothing had changed. A month passed in this eerie state of our fractured marriage until one day, my mother, the president of our company, called me into her office. "I have something important to discuss with you," she said solemnly. Her grave tone caught me off guard, and I braced myself for serious news, which only compounded the stress I was already feeling. That evening, perhaps sensing the inevitable, Madison suggested that we consider separating. I was already contemplating how to address the divorce given her infidelity, so her initiation was unexpectedly convenient. "Yes, let's divorce," I agreed quickly. Madison seemed taken aback by my readiness, possibly hopeful about her future with Daniel. Despite the sting of seeing her relief, I signed the divorce papers she presented. "I can file these tomorrow." "I'll be leaving this house," she said nonchalantly. "Are you sure about the mortgage?" I asked casually, suspecting that she hadn't fully considered her financial situation without me. Her job was demanding but not lucrative, and I doubted her ability to manage the mortgage payments on her own. Nevertheless, she was confident, or perhaps just naive. Given her betrayal, I felt no obligation to ease her transition. I moved back to my parents' house a few days later. They were initially worried about my well-being but became furious when I explained Madison's infidelity. They supported my decision to leave her, reassuring me repeatedly that parting ways was the best course of action. Throwing myself into work, I tried to move past the emotional turmoil of my failed marriage. A year flew by in a blur of commitments and projects. One evening, seeing how engrossed and tired I had become, my mother suggested a break. "Why don't you take a trip? It's going to get busy starting next month," she advised, concerned about my well-being. Grateful for the suggestion and feeling mentally exhausted, I decided to take a solo trip to the Northeast, craving a change of scenery and some peace. The air in the Northeast was crisp and refreshing, seeming to cleanse my weary soul. I interacted with locals who were incredibly kind and helpful, gradually mending my spirit. I booked a stay in Los Angeles at a renowned hotel, deciding to indulge in the best experience possible. After checking in, I relaxed in the lobby with a welcome drink, the fatigue from my journey melting away. I felt so at peace that I half-joked about moving to Los Angeles. Just then, a familiar voice pierced through the calm. "Hey, what are you doing here?" I turned, startled to find Madison entering the lobby with two large suitcases. The unexpected encounter with my ex-wife was the last thing I anticipated on this healing journey. Surrounded by the elegant charm of the Los Angeles hotel lobby, I felt a sudden jolt of the revelation. Goldsmith Enterprises rang a bell, and I recalled it just as Madison's face lit up with childlike glee. Impressive. His family's loaded, they even paid off our house mortgage. Thanks for making the divorce easy, Patrick, she said sarcastically. Yeah, I know them. They're in that big building downtown, right? I've been there, I replied calmly, barely fazed by her remarks. Madison looked surprised. Oh, you've been there? Well, his family owns a huge company, so breaking up with you was the right choice, she smirked maliciously. I nodded, still calm. That building? It's part of our real estate holdings, I mentioned casually, as if recalling a minor detail. What do you mean, our real estate? Madison and Daniel chimed in together, both perplexed. That building is rented by my mother for her most prestigious office. I'm not sure if your company is involved in real estate, but it's certainly not a shabby building, I explained with a serene tone. Their skepticism was palpable. I paused, knowing there was no turning back. Yes, I know how grand it is. I was there when my mother purchased that building for about $500 million. Recently, she was complaining about a tenant not paying their rent. Turns out it was your company. In fact, my mother is a real estate magnate with assets worth $5 billion, and that building is one of them. Goldsmith Enterprises has been the tenant for the past few months, and they haven't paid their rent, I revealed, watching their reactions closely. Daniel burst out laughing, disbelief written all over his face. That can't be true. Our company is doing great, he claimed, still laughing, but the shock in his eyes told a different story. Despite the shock of seeing Madison with her new husband, I was determined not to be drawn into their drama. Yet Daniel's loud claims that their company could surely pay the rent echoed around us, hinting at denial or deceit. His tone was dismissive, suggesting I was lying just to create discord between him and Madison. Realizing a simple conversation wouldn't suffice, I pulled out my smartphone right there in the hotel lobby. I'm here with the son of Goldsmith Enterprises, I told my mom over the phone. Can you send me a photo of the rent reminder notice? Within moments, my mother sent a clear image of the notice addressed to Goldsmith Enterprises, showing 4 months of unpaid rent. I showed the image to Madison and Daniel, doubting they could dismiss it as fake given the immediate proof. See, if you don't pay soon, we might have to consider legal action. What are you going to do? I asked calmly. Daniel's confidence wavered as he mumbled, come to think of it, Dad has been stressed lately, talking about slow sales and firing a lot of employees. Madison, however, seemed to spiral into denial, accusing me of fabricating the story to split them up. You're just trying to trick us and tear us apart, aren't you? You're still the kind of person trying to get back at me for remarrying. Your tactics are dirty, she shouted, causing me to step back, shocked by her loud, accusing voice. Her words brought back painful memories of our marriage and all the harsh things she had said when things got tough between us. But now, standing here, I was no longer the person who took her words silently. What are you even saying, Madison? Do you really think I still have feelings for you? How foolish. I've long been over a woman like you. In fact, I feel sorry for Daniel getting caught up with someone like you, I said, my voice steady but firm. Did you marry him just for his money? You had shallow reasons for marrying me too, like wanting to get married quickly and wanting kids. And who was it that left me when she found out we couldn't have kids? Who called me useless for being infertile? You're to blame for all of it, yet you think I still have feelings for you? You must be out of your mind. Madison's face turned red with anger. You're just an arrogant old geezer. You probably can't even get married or have kids anymore. Daniel and I are planning to have fun making a baby after this trip, she retorted, her voice thick with desperation. It was then I decided to reveal the truth to finally put an end to her assumptions. Oh, I didn't mention it, but my wife is 5 months pregnant. She's in the stable phase of her pregnancy, so my mom suggested I take this trip to relax, I revealed calmly. That's right. After our divorce, I found someone who truly supports me, my boss at work, who happens to be a subordinate of my mother. She has been a great support both personally and professionally. We found out about the pregnancy just 5 months ago. Birth control? I never did that. Remember, I told you I had infertility tests at the clinic, and they found no issues with me. The doctor suggested the problem was likely with you, but you refused to get tested. So the problem was with you all along, I said, my words blunt and to the point. Her face contorted with the realization. Does that mean Daniel and I can't have kids? Why did I divorce you to marry Daniel? She muttered to herself, her shoulders slumping in defeat. What do you mean, why? You're the one who's infertile. Daniel snapped back, his anger flaring at Madison's self-centered logic. Realizing I had no reason to engage further, I delivered my final statement. That's why. From now on, please keep your affairs separate from mine. Regarding the rent for Goldsmith Enterprises, I expect full payment if you intend to continue leasing the building. Please settle the overdue rent soon, otherwise, we'll need to pursue legal action. I have nothing more to say to you. Goodbye. With that, I left Madison and Daniel in mid-argument and confidently returned to my hotel room. Upon my return from the trip, my wife greeted me with a warm smile. Welcome back. Sorry I couldn't help around the house. Was everything okay? Of course, it was fine. I'm just glad you got to relax, Patrick, she replied, her smile genuine and comforting. Since marrying my current wife, I felt reassured daily, and thoughts of Madison had faded into the background. After that incident, I didn't see Madison again, but through my mother's contacts, I learned that Madison and Daniel's situation had worsened. Despite her initial belief that she was marrying into wealth, Madison discovered that Goldsmith Enterprises was steeped in debt. News had spread across TV channels about an employee at Goldsmith Enterprises embezzling millions from clients. Daniel's father had known about the fraud but attempted to cover it up to protect the company's reputation. However, once the scandal became public, Goldsmith Enterprises' stock plummeted, and the company lost its credibility. A mass exodus of employees followed. In such a dire state, it was clear they couldn't possibly cover their rent, let alone recover from the scandal. This turn of events reaffirmed my relief in having moved on from that chapter in my life as I focused on a future filled with stability and genuine affection with my new wife. 3 months later, I received an unexpected email from Daniel. His message was formal but desperate, explaining that Goldsmith Enterprises was being liquidated and he was seeking employment opportunities. He asked if my mother's company might have any positions available, citing his business degree and experience in corporate management. I showed the email to my mother during our weekly strategy meeting. She read it carefully, then looked up at me with a measured expression. "What do you think we should do?" she asked. The question surprised me. "You're asking for my opinion?" "You could be running this company soon," she replied. "Consider this your first executive decision." I thought about Madison, about Daniel, about everything that had happened. "I don't think hiring him would be appropriate," I said finally. "The situation is too personal, and Goldsmith's management practices weren't exactly exemplary." My mother nodded approvingly. "I agree, but perhaps we can refer him elsewhere. Everyone deserves a second chance, but not necessarily with us." A week later, Madison called me. Her voice sounded hollow, almost unrecognizable. "Patrick, I need to talk to you." We met at a coffee shop downtown. Madison looked nothing like the confident woman who had mocked me in the hotel lobby. Her designer clothes had been replaced with simple attire, and her flashy jewelry was gone. "I lost everything," she said without preamble. "The house was foreclosed. Daniel left me when his father was arrested. I'm staying with my sister." I remained silent, unsure why she was telling me this. She continued, staring into her coffee. "I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything, for how I treated you, for the affair, for all of it." Her apology seemed genuine, but years of manipulation had taught me caution. "Thank you for apologizing," I said carefully. "I hope things improve for you." Your mother's company bought the Goldsmith building, didn't they? She asked. I nodded. It was a business decision. Did you influence that decision? Her eyes searched mine. No, I answered truthfully. My mother makes her own choices. As we parted ways, Madison handed me a small envelope. This is for your baby. I know we can't undo the past, but maybe someday. Inside was a handcrafted silver rattle, a peace offering, perhaps, or a reminder of what she had lost. 6 months later, I stood beside my wife in the hospital, holding our newborn daughter. My mother had officially